Hello, everybody. Today we've got a poll out of Pennsylvania that shows a tied race, but Biden with the slightest advantage. But first, we've got the big news from last night. Here it is right here. From the AP, Donald Trump banned from Colorado ballot in historic ruling by state Supreme Court. So this is notable because there were previous state Supreme Court rulings over the past few weeks in Minnesota and Michigan. They allowed Trump to stay on the ballot. But Colorado, they're going in a different direction. They're saying Trump cannot be on the primary ballot. Some of you probably don't really follow politics. You haven't heard about the previous cases, but the first paragraph pretty much sums it up. We've got a divided Colorado Supreme Court on Tuesday declared former President Donald Trump ineligible for the White House under the U.S. Constitution's insurrection clause and removed him from the state's presidential primary ballot, setting up a likely showdown in the nation's highest court to decide whether the frontrunner for the GOP nomination can remain in the race. So this all stems back to January 6, 2021, and at this point, most of you probably have your own view on it. What I hear from one extreme is it was all an inside job. Trump did not incite anything. It was free speech, etc. And then on the other end, I hear this was an extremely violent takeover of the U.S. Capitol. It is right up there with Pearl Harbor and 9/11 as the absolute darkest days in the history of the country. I would guess most people are somewhere between the two extremes, but I'll leave that to you to make your own conclusions. So on the Colorado Supreme Court, all 7 of those justices were appointed by Democratic governors, and the decision was 4-3, so it was narrow. So what happens next? Well, the court stayed its decision until January 4th or until the U.S. Supreme Court rules on the case. Colorado officials say the issue must be settled by January 5th, the deadline for the state to print its presidential primary ballots. So that's the gist of it. There's a quote that says they don't reach the conclusions lightly. They're fully aware of the magnitude and they don't want to be swayed by the public, yada yada. And for some reference, Trump lost Colorado by 13 points in 2020. He doesn't need the state to win next year, but the danger is other states might follow Colorado's lead and deny Trump from other ballots. So you can go on to read the rest of this. It talks more about the court, the background, the reaction, as well as the other cases in Minnesota and Michigan. So my guess is eventually the U.S. Supreme Court will overturn this, even though it's a little unusual because it's a state Supreme Court they're overruling. But you never know what's going to happen. There's no question Republicans are going to view this as election interference. Democrats are going to say they're just doing what's right and following the law. If you take out the two sides, I would guess more the people in the middle or the independents, they're going to say even if they don't necessarily like Trump, taking him off the ballot and not even allowing voters to have a say, that's going to be a little bit too far. So I'm guessing public opinion is going to be against this. I know Democrats despise Trump. They would love to not have to face him in election because you never know what's going to happen. He could win. So they do have to balance that with the fundamentals of democracy and allowing voters to have a voice. So it's an ugly situation. But Minnesota and Michigan, those are hardly Republican courts. They're keeping Trump on the ballot, and there's going to be some subjectivity to it. I usually try to gauge what the independents would say, and again, I think they would say it's not obvious enough that it was an insurrection, and they might not necessarily like Trump, but it's going to be a little bit too far if the Republican frontrunner is not even allowed on the ballot, and the rest of the Republican primary field outside of Ramaswamy is probably going to have a difficult time dealing with this. It's not going to look good if DeSantis and Haley come out and say, yeah, this is a great idea, keep Trump off the ballot, but at the same time, they probably like how this gives him more baggage, and they theoretically could say, hey, GOP primary voters, you're going to want to vote for us because at least we're on the ballot in all 50 states. And this also could boost Trump's support even more, like the previous indictments have. So we'll see what happens with that, if there's any fallout. But we can move on to a poll we've got out of Pennsylvania. Here it is. It's from Muhlenberg College, and the sample size in this poll was 421 registered voters. Now, that's not a lot. Usually you want to get something at least over 600. So the margin of error is 6.5%. That's a wide range. But the poll shows Biden at 42, Trump at 41. So nobody hitting 50%, nobody even hitting 43. So what else does this poll say? 65% of those surveyed say they do not believe Biden deserves another term in the White House, while 57% disapprove of his job performance, and 61% believe his age works against him, deeming him too old to serve another term. So not looking good for Biden there. But how about Trump? Well, 68% believe Trump does not have the right temperament to be president. So Trump also looking weak. If you want to compare a head-to-head with Nikki Nikki Haley and Joe Biden. Haley actually leads by 5, but it's only 38 to 33. A lot of undecideds in that. If it were Ron DeSantis, he trails by 2, 41 to 39. And I kind of like this matchup here. They do Governor Josh Shapiro against Donald Trump. Shapiro leads by 11, 48 to 37. Also, Shapiro's approval rating is at 51. There's a little bit of demographic breakdown, but down here we've got independents. That's a key block, and they're favoring Trump, 34 to 33. A lot of undecideds, and this poll didn't really ask it, but also a bunch more that would probably vote third party. They throw in a question about abortion here. 52% support the establishment of the right to an abortion in the state constitution. 41% oppose. That's not a surprise. Most people want some access to abortion, but I'm always interested to know where the cutoff might be. This says 53% believe the state should not allow an abortion 15 weeks or more into a pregnancy. So those are the highlights of this Pennsylvania poll. I've got the full poll right here. As always, the links will be down below in the description. This goes into more depth about Trump and Biden. It asks about key issues and has more demographic breakdown. It is something to take a look at. However, again, the sample size is not very high. And as I always say, it's one poll. It's best to look at a lot of polls, especially in the aggregate. That's what I try to do. But this is a fresh poll, so I figured I'd pull it up. Now, the last thing we could do about this poll is take a look at this pollster's reputation. So for that, we could get on 538. So here it is, Muhlenberg College. They have an A-. That does sound pretty good on the surface. We could go down here and take a look at their accuracy. On a glance, it does seem to be kind of in the middle. About half the time, they overestimate Democrats. The other half, they overestimate Republicans. Now, this pollster only does Pennsylvania. So let's see how they did in the recent elections. In the midterms, for governor, they had Shapiro at 14. He won it by 14.8. Spot on poll right there, off by less than 1 point. In the Senate, they had an even race, but Fetterman got it by 4.9. That's a moderate miss in favor of the Republicans. Now, what about 2020? That's the last presidential race. In their last poll, they had Biden up by 5. He got it by 1.2. That's a 3.8 bias in favor of the Democrats. Their poll from the previous week was even worse. That was off by 5.8. So they underestimated Trump's support in 2020. In 2018, they didn't have a bad year, but most of those races were not really contested. Back in 2016, their final poll had Clinton winning by 6. Trump got it by 0.7. That's a decent miss of 6.7 in favor of Clinton. But in that Senate race, they actually nailed it. 1% for Pat Toomey. So this pollster does have some hits. They also have some misses. They seem to do their worst when Trump is on the ballot. Maybe that continues. Maybe it doesn't. I do wish they would up their sample size on these older polls. They're still using barely over 400 voters. So again, it's just one poll, but that's the latest one to take a look at. There's going to be more. I'm going to leave it there for now. So let me know in the comments. What do you think about Trump being removed from the Colorado ballot? Is it going to be overturned? Are other states going to follow suit? And how about this poll in Pennsylvania? Do you like the pollster or do you disregard it entirely? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.